if you pull out your phone right now and open up a map app, there is just this fundamental expectation of, like, absolute undeniable precision.
Oh, yeah, completely. You expect it to be perfect.
Right. You drop a pin, and that little glowing dot tells you with total engineering certainty, you are here.
A coordinate is a coordinate.
Exactly. It's clean, it's binary, and honestly, it's deeply comforting. We really like to know exactly where things are.
Yeah, we do.
And I think even more importantly, we like to know exactly where history happened. Like, if you visit a historical monument, you want to stand on the literal plaque that says, George Washington stood exactly on this square foot of dirt.
Right. We absolutely crave that geographical anchor. It gives us a sense of control over the past, I think.
Yeah, exactly. We want history to be securely tethered to these visible, undisputed landscapes.
And then you step into the world of ancient history.
Right, and specifically the foundational epic stories of the ancient Middle East. And the moment you do that,
the GPS shatters.
It completely shatters. That satellite system we all rely on is just gone. Suddenly, we're looking at a geographical landscape that is incredibly archy.
It really is.
I mean, we think we know where all these monumental events took place, right? Where Moses walked, where the holy cities were.
Because tradition and heritage have pointed to the exact same spots in the desert for centuries.
Exactly. But today, we are asking a very destabilizing question for this deep dive. What if all those pins on your mental map were moved?
Which is just a massive, staggering thought. It is the ultimate diagnostic puzzle, really, playing out on a geological and historical scale.
It really is. So welcome to the Deep Talks. Today we are embarking on this massive, mind-bending historical detective story.
And we have a really fascinating stack of source material to get through.
We do. We've got articles, research notes, and extensive excerpts, and they're authored entirely by Dr. Khaled Waleed. The whole collection is titled The Geography of Revelation, From Midian to the Sacred Valley.
And Dr. Waleed's mission here is something truly radical.
Radical is definitely the word.
He is attempting to completely remap the ancient stories of Moses, of Lot, and of the Prophet Muhammad. But he isn't using centuries of accepted folklore or traditional heritage to do it.
Which is what everyone else does, right?
Right. Instead, he is building his map using a 100% textual analysis of the Quran combined with hard modern geology.
Wow.
Yeah. He is essentially ignoring the traditional maps altogether to see what the text itself builds if you read it like a literal surveyor.
Which is a massive swing. Now, before we jump into how he actually pulls this off, we need to set some very important ground rules for this conversation.
Yes, absolutely crucial.
If you are listening to this right now, you really need to know that Dr. Waleed is touching on some incredibly sensitive historical, religious, and potentially politically charged third rails here.
Very charged.
Right. So our goal today is absolutely not to take a side. We aren't endorsing his theories, and we certainly aren't jumping into the political or religious fray to validate these claims.
No, not at all. We are purely playing the role of impartial historical detectives.
Exactly. Our job is strictly to unpack the fascinating radical arguments that Dr. Waleed has put down on paper so you can understand the mechanics of his unique geographic thesis.
That context is so important. We were just exploring the methodology he uses and the geographical conclusions he draws entirely as an examination of his specific source material.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because Dr. Waleed is essentially telling us that the traditional maps of the ancient Middle East,
the ones that have informed centuries of global understanding.
Right, those maps might be completely upside down. And the twist here, he argues that the clues haven't been locked away in some secret Vatican-style archive.
They've been hiding in plain sight.
Yes. They are woven directly into the geological record and the literal words of the text.
And that is really the foundation of his entire approach. Dr. Waleed argues that we've been misreading these ancient texts by treating them purely as spiritual poetry or, abstract metaphors.
Like just nice stories.
Exactly. He contends that they're actually precise geological blueprints, but only provided you understand the physical terminology being used.
So if you're listening, I want you to picture the traditional map of the Middle East in your head.
We all know the one.
Right. You probably have the stories of Moses happening around Egypt and the Sinai Peninsula, and then the later stories of Muhammad happening hundreds of miles south, deep in the Arabian desert in places like Mecca and Medina.
That's the standard understanding.
But Dr. Waleed starts tearing up that map by looking for the exact physical location of these events. And he begins with perhaps the most mysterious word in the narrative of Moses.
The word Tuwa.
Yes, Tua.
So when Moses approaches the burning bush, the text famously states he is in the holy valley of Tuwa. And for centuries, commentators and historians have largely treated Tuwa as just a proper noun.
Right, like the name tag for a sacred space.
Exactly.
Like saying the Hudson Valley or a Silicon Valley. It's just, what the locals called it.
But Dr. Waleed takes a purely linguistic and structural approach here. He completely divorces it from that tradition. He analyzes the ancient Arabic root of the word tuwa, which is T-W-I.
T-W-Y, okay.
Right. And in ancient Arabic, this root does not function as a proper name. It actually functions as a descriptor of a physical state.
A physical state.
Yes. The root, T-W-Y, translates to folded, double, bent, or folded back on itself.
Okay, wait, a folded valley.
Yes.
Folded.
Yeah.
When I look at a valley, I usually think of like a dip between two hills that was carved by a river over millions of years. But folded implies something much more violent or structural, doesn't it?
It does, and let's look at it through the lens of a geologist, which is exactly what Dr. Waleed does here. From a scientific standpoint, a folded valley between two mountain ranges perfectly describes a very specific, massive geological phenomenon,
Which is?
a tectonic rift valley.
A rift valley. Okay, my earth science is a little dusty, I have to admit.
No worries, it's complex stuff.
Walk us through the actual mechanics of that. How does the earth physically fold into a valley?
Yeah. Okay, so think of the Earth's crust, not as a solid shell, but as a series of rigid tectonic plates floating on molten rock.
Right, plate tectonics.
Exactly. A rift valley forms when two of these massive continental plates are literally pulling apart from each other.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and as they separate, the tension causes the central block of land between them to just collapse. It drops violently down to form a deep linear trench.
So the ground just falls out from underneath.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the edges of the plates on either side remain elevated, forming these steep escarpments or parallel mountain ranges.
I see.
So if you were to take a knife and slice a cross-section of this landscape, it literally looks like the layers of the earth have been bent and folded down in the middle.
That's incredible.
As a dual-layered folded depression.
So Dr. Waleed is saying Tua isn't the name on the welcome sign.
Yep.
It's the geological schematic. It is literally the folded valley.
That is precisely his point.
Yeah.
And he reinforces this linguistic revelation by linking it directly to another Quranic verse.
Which one?
The one that describes the earth with the rift or the earth with the fault. In Arabic, that's al-ard, that al-sada.
Okay. And how is that usually interpreted?
Well, traditionally, scholars might read that as a metaphor for a broken or divided society. You know, a rift between people.
Right, a poetic rift.
But Dr. Waleed says, no, this isn't poetry. It is a literal physical description of a massive, active, tectonic fault line.
Okay, so if we were playing along with Dr. Waleed's rules here, we are looking for a massive, historically significant, folded valley.
A tectonic rift.
Right, a tectonic rift in this general part of the world. And if you look at a topographical map of the Middle East, there really is only one main suspect that fits a description that massive.
Oh, it's undeniable. Dr. Waleed identifies this specific rift as the Dead Sea Transform Fault.
The Dead Sea Fault.
Yes, which is a major segment of the Great Rift Valley system. I mean, this isn't just a local gorge. This fault line is a colossal scar on the face of the earth.
How big are we talking?
It stretches from the Gulf of Aqaba in the south, runs straight up through the Wadi Aruba, creates the basin for the Dead Sea, continues up the Jordan Valley, and pushes all the way into Lebanon.
That is massive. And the Dead Sea itself is the deepest land depression on the planet, right?
It is.
Something like, what, 400 meters below sea level?
Exactly. It is the ultimate folded valley. It is a massive, highly active geological fold that defines the entire topography of the Levant.
It's like finding a precise GPS coordinate hidden inside ancient poetry.
It really is.
We have always read these texts as purely spiritual journeys. But Dr. Waleed is saying, read it like a surveyor. The text is literally giving you the tectonic plate boundaries of the narrative.
That realization right there is the bedrock of his entire methodology. He demands that we treat the text as a functional descriptor of physical reality.
Right.
If the text says the valley is folded and there happens to be a massive folded tectonic rift valley dominating the region where these historical events allegedly began.
He refuses to see that as a coincidence.
Exactly. To him, it is an exact coordinate.
I see the logic. I really do. But let me push back a little here.
Sure, go ahead.
If this valley, this Tua, is the Dead Sea fault line, this massive trench running north to south, where exactly are the mountains on either side of it?
Good question.
Because the story of Moses isn't just about a valley, right? It is entirely centered around a mountain.
The Mount, or at Tur.
Right. So if he is walking around in a massive tectonic trench, how does Dr. Waleed locate the specific mountain he climbs?
Well, that is where Dr. Waleed's textual mapping gets incredibly detailed.
Okay, I'm listening.
What's fascinating here is how he maps the surrounding geography based purely on the internal directional logic of the text.
Right.
He completely ignores external traditional maps.
He just builds it from scratch.
He builds a topographical map from the narrative's own coordinates. The text constantly refers to the Mount or at Tur, but it never leaves it floating in a void.
It gives directions.
Yes, it gives it very specific directional attributes.
So we're moving into the second phase of his thesis then, establishing the coordinates of revelation, east versus west.
Exactly. Let's trace the journey. To locate the mountain, we first have to locate Moses before he ever gets to the mountain.
Right, where does he start?
According to the text, Moses fled his troubles in Egypt and went to live in a place called Midian.
Okay, Midian.
Now, if you look at a standard historical map today, many place Midian deep in the northwestern part of modern-day Saudi Arabia.
Right, far to the south.
Way down the coast of the Red Sea.
Yeah.
But Dr. Waleed, using a combination of historical, textual, and geographic arguments, insists that Midian is not in Saudi Arabia at all.
Where does he put it?
Based on his reading of ancient trade routes and textual clues, he locates Midian in modern-day Jordan.
Jordan?
Specifically, the rugged region east of the Dead Sea and the Wadi Raba, near historical places like Petra and Mount Seir.
Okay, let me visualize this. So Midian is on the eastern side of this massive north-south rift valley.
Exactly. Keep that picture in your mind. Moses is living in Midian, which is in the east.
Got it.
He decides it's time to return to Egypt, which is far to the west. So he packs up his family and travels from east to west.
Makes sense.
Now, to do that, his trajectory must take him directly across this massive, deep Dead Sea Rift Valley.
He literally has to walk down into the fold, cross the fault line, and climb out the other side.
He has to cross the fold. Now, the text states that as he is making this journey, traveling at night, he sees a fire on the side of the mount.
The burning bush.
Right. And the specific wording used is that he was called from the right side of the mount or the right side of the valley.
Okay, let's work out the geometry of that.
Let's do it.
If I am Moses, and I am walking from east to west, from Jordan toward Egypt, and I am approaching a mountain range that runs north-south along the edges of this rift valley.
Right, you're walking west.
The side of the mountain facing me, the side I am going to hit first as I walk westward, is the eastern flank.
You've hit on exactly Dr. Waleed's point. The right side isn't some abstract moral judgment in this context where right means good.
It's just a direction.
It is a hard, directional coordinate based on the traveler's trajectory. The eastern flank of the Rift Valley, the Jordanian side where Midian is located, corresponds to the right side in the narrative.
Wow, okay.
And Dr. Waleed links this eastern side to the Quranic mention of a place called Sinan, which is historically and textually associated with the land of figs.
So, east of the rift gives us a cluster of identifiers. We have Midian, modern-day Jordan, the right side of the mount, the region of Sinan, and the agricultural symbol of figs.
That is one half of the geographic pair.
That is really clean. Okay, so what's on the other side?
Now, complete the crossing. What is on the other side of the rift? If Moses crosses the valley floor and climbs up the western escarpment, where is he?
Well, he's heading toward Egypt.
Right. But immediately out of the valley, he is in modern-day Palestine, the elevated areas of Jerusalem, Hebron, and Nablus.
Oh.
This, geographically, is the western side. And Dr. Waleed links this western flank to Sinai and the land historically characterized by olives.
So Dr. Waleed is building a perfect, symmetrical, geographic dichotomy here, completely separated by the Dead Sea Rift Valley.
A perfect split.
East is figs, Sinan, and Midian. West is olives, Sinai, and Palestine.
Exactly. And here is where Dr. Waleed introduces a crucial piece of textual evidence to lock this entire topographical map into place.
What's the evidence?
He points to a very specific verse in the Quran that is addressed directly to the Prophet Muhammad centuries after Moses.
Centuries later. Okay.
The verse says to Muhammad, "You were not on the western side when we decreed the command to Moses."
You were not on the western side.
Think about the physical implications of that phrasing. It doesn't just say, "You weren't born yet," or "You weren't there."
Right. It doesn't just say you missed it.
It specifically says, "You were not on the western side." Dr. Waleed argues that this is the smoking gun. It's an exact geographic coordinate. By telling Muhammad he was not on the western side of this specific geographical system during the time of Moses, the text is establishing the literal physical reality of the western side of the mount.
That makes a lot of sense.
It grounds the entire abstract narrative into a real directional topography.
So what does this all mean for the listener trying to wrap their head around this?
It's a big shift in perspective.
It really is. It means Dr. Waleed is trying to prove that the text describes a highly functional, literal geographical system. We are so used to reading ancient scripture as a collection of spiritual metaphors.
Right, where east might just mean dawn or rebirth.
Exactly, and west means sunset or death. Or where climbing a mountain is just a psychological symbol for getting closer to God.
But Dr. Waleed is saying, no, strip the poetry away.
This is a literal topographical map. There is a tectonic fault line, there is an eastern mountain range, there is a western mountain range, and the events are perfectly plotted along an X and Y axis.
He demands we look at the dirt, the rocks, the geology.
The physical reality. Yes. And by establishing this rigid, unmoving geographical theater, this Dead Sea transformed fault and its two flanking mountain ranges, he sets the stage for his most controversial and, frankly, mind-bending claim.
Which brings us to section 3 of our deep dive, the concept of time and history.
This is where it gets really intense.
Because if this geography is this literal and this tightly clustered around the Levant,
or around the Dead Sea.
Right, where does the Prophet Muhammad fit into this map? If you know anything about the traditional history of Islam, the story of Muhammad is centered far to the south, deep in the Arabian Peninsula, in Mecca and Medina.
That is the accepted history.
But Dr. Waleed proposes a historical continuity that completely shatters that map.
He really does. This is where Dr. Waleed's thesis moves from provocative geology to a radical reimagining of history.
So what's his argument here?
His central thesis for this section can be summarized in one powerful concept. God fixed the place and moved the time.
Fix the place, move the time. So the stage remains exactly the same. The physical theater doesn't change. Only the actors and the era change. That is the crux of it. He argues that the monumental events of Moses, the destruction of Lot, and later the events of Muhammad, didn't just happen in the same general Middle Eastern hemisphere.
Right.
He argues they happened in the exact same hyper-localized geographic theater, the Levant, specifically clustered around this Dead Sea Rift Valley system.
Okay, I have to stop you there.
I thought you might.
Because putting Muhammad up north in the Levant, right next to the Dead Sea, instead of deep in the southern desert of Arabia, that goes against almost all of established traditional historical consensus.
It does. It completely upends it.
How on earth does he justify that leap?
He justifies it by remaining stubbornly loyal to his textual methodology. He relies strictly on the internal clues of the text itself, intentionally ignoring the historical commentaries and traditions that were written centuries later.
Okay, so just the text. What does the text say?
To place Muhammad geographically, he points to verses where Muhammad is being addressed about the destroyed people of Lot.
The people of Lot, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Exactly. The text explicitly says to Muhammad and his primary audience, the people of Lot are not far from you, and even more specifically, you pass by them morning and night.
You pass by them morning and night. Let's think about the logistics of that.
Let's do the math on the commute.
Yeah.
The Dead Sea region is universally accepted by almost all historians and archaeologists as the site of Lot's destruction.
Right. That's not really debated.
No, it's not. If Muhammad and his people were located deep in the southern Arabian desert in Mecca, that is nearly 800 miles away from the Dead Sea.
800 miles.
How could an ancient community traveling by foot or camel possibly pass by the ruins of Lot morning and night?
They couldn't. I mean, it
Yeah.
makes absolutely no logical, logistical, or geographic sense for a daily commute.
Right, it's geographically impossible.
It's like saying someone who lives in Atlanta passes by the Statue of Liberty morning and night on their way to work. It's impossible. Unless, well, they live right there.
The only way the text makes literal sense is if the audience is local. Dr. Waleed uses these verses to place Muhammad geographically right on the ancient, bustling trade routes of the Jordan Valley and the Dead Sea area.
Wow.
He argues that the text places Muhammad directly in the shadow of the same physical ruins, the same folded rift valley that swallowed the people of Lot.
That is just a profound paradigm shift.
It changes everything.
Instead of a sprawling history that hops hundreds of miles across vast deserts over millennia, Dr. Waleed is proposing a hyper-localized history. a single highly charged geographical choke point where all these prophetic dramas unfold, layer upon layer on top of each other.
And he doesn't just see this continuity in the rocks and the ruins either. He sees it in the social and institutional structures described in the text.
Oh, really? How so?
This is where he introduces the concept of al-Jaman, which translates to the two groups, and a fascinating textual recurring motif known as the 70.
Okay, let's dig into the 70, because when I was reviewing his notes, this is where I felt like a skeptic would really start pushing back.
It's definitely a bold claim.
According to the text, in the story of Moses chose 70 men from his people for a special divine appointment.
Right.
Then, centuries later in the text, Muhammad is told regarding a group of hypocrites that even if he asked forgiveness for them 70 times, they wouldn't be forgiven.
That's what the text says.
Now, isn't 70 just a really common ancient Near Eastern idiom? Like when we say, I've told you a million times, it just means a really large number. Why does Dr. Waleed refuse to read it as a metaphor?
You're right. That is the standard academic pushback. Most scholars say 70 is just a number of completeness, an idiom. But Dr. Waleed counters this by leaning into his framework of fixed space and continuous history.
Okay.
If the geography hasn't moved, maybe the institutions haven't either. He views the 70 not as a random idiomatic number, but as an enduring institutional and judicial structure that persisted in that specific Levant geography.
An institution. You mean like a Senate or a Supreme Court?
Let's use the Supreme Court analogy, actually. It fits perfectly. Think of the Sanhedrin in later Jewish history, which famously consisted of 71 members, 70 elders, plus the high priest.
Right, I've heard of that.
It was a supreme religious and judicial body. Dr. Waleed argues that when Moses chooses 70 men, he isn't just grabbing 70 random guys. He is establishing a formal leadership class, a judicial body.
Okay, I follow that. But what about Muhammad centuries later?
When Muhammad is interacting with the group associated with the 70 centuries later, he isn't being told to repeat a prayer 70 times like a broken record. He is dealing with the direct, historical, institutional descendants of that exact same judicial body, entrenched in the exact same geographic region.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So even if you ask forgiveness for them 70 times is a mistranslation of intent. It really means even if you ask forgiveness for the actual leadership council, they won't be forgiven because their institutional corruption is too deep.
That is his exact argument. He sees an unbroken chain of human behavior and societal structure anchored to this specific rift valley.
That's fascinating.
The geology is the same, the judicial institutions are the same, the political conflicts are the same, only the time has moved forward.
Which brings us perfectly to the actors in this repeating drama. If the stage is fixed and the political institutions are continuous, who are the people actually fighting over it?
Right. Who are the players?
Dr. Waleed turns to two very potent recurring symbols in the text, doesn't he? The accursed tree and the good tree.
Yes, he does. Having built the physical stage and identified the institutions, he examines the ideological lineages that populate it. And he is adamant that these trees mentioned in the Quran are not literal botanical plants.
We aren't talking about agriculture here.
No, not at all. They are metaphors for extended social, ideological, and historical lineages.
Now, when I first read about a good tree and an accursed tree, my mind immediately went to genealogy, like a royal bloodline, or unfortunately, the way ancient texts are sometimes misused to condemn entire ethnic groups based on DNA.
Which happens far too often.
Right. But Dr. Waleed is actually stripping physical DNA out of the equation entirely, isn't he?
That is a vital distinction, and it goes right back to our impartiality rule at the beginning. We must emphasize this to accurately reflect his work without validating any broader, dangerous political or racial applications.
Absolutely.
Dr. Waleed's focus is structural and behavioral. He argues fiercely that the text is not condemning a race or a bloodline. It is tracing a specific methodology of rebellion.
It's like a political party that survives for centuries regardless of who is actually in it.
Exactly. Let's break them down. According to Dr. Waleed's textual analysis, the good tree represents the children of Adam in their natural, pure inclination.
What Islamic theology calls the fitra.
Right. It represents any group across any era who adheres to divine covenants, who maintains the original uncorrupted message. It is a lineage of methodology defined by right action and justice.
And the accursed tree.
The accursed tree represents a specific rebellious ideological faction. Dr. Waleed identifies this, based on his reading of the text, as a faction that originated within the children of Israel.
Okay.
Specifically a subgroup that was historically cursed by the prophets David and Jesus for their actions. This tree represents a methodology of breaking covenants, hoarding power, distorting truth, and perpetuating a lineage of systemic rebellion.
So it's about their actions, not their genetics.
Yes. He even links this accursed tree to the lineage of Iblis or Satan. The idea is that there is an active, continuous ideological force constantly trying to corrupt humanity.
So it's a multi-generational war of ideas and behaviors. It is the archetype of the oppressor versus the archetype of the faithful.
Yes. It is an ideological clash that, according to his thesis, plays out continuously, century after century, in this exact same Levant geography.
In the Rift Valley.
Exactly. He traces this repeating clash from the time of Noah to Hud to Salah to Lot to Moses, and finally culminating in the time of Muhammad. The accursed tree is the covenant breaker, the one who distorts the truth, appearing over and over in this theater.
It really paints a picture of history, not as a straight line of human progress, but as a repeating loop.
A loop, exactly.
The same fundamental ideological battle fought by different generations over the exact same piece of folded earth.
But the earth doesn't just sit there passively while this happens, and that is where Dr. Waleed's thesis takes its most dramatic turn.
It does.
Because when that ideological rebellion, that accursed tree, reaches its absolute zenith of corruption, when the human actors push the limits of this divine theater,
the physical geography violently reacts.
It reacts.
Which brings us to the most visceral part of his research, honestly. Geological punishment.
It is intense.
This is where the geology and the theology violently collide. Because Dr. Waleed looks at how the text describes divine punishment, and he links it directly to the unique, highly volatile geology of the Dead Sea Fault we talked about earlier.
He does. He examines the famous stories of the destruction of Lot's people, the destruction of the people of Al-Hijr, and the destruction of a mysterious army known as the Companions of the Elephant.
Okay, those are three major events.
Right, and he notes a very specific, recurring detail across all these events. They all face the exact same material punishment. A punishment the text repeatedly calls sigil.
Sigil. How is that usually translated in traditional texts?
Traditionally, it is often translated as baked clay or stones of baked clay.
Baked clay.
Yeah, it makes it sound almost like literal pottery or bricks being magically dropped from the sky.
But Dr. Waleed looks at it through the lens of a geologist standing in the middle of the Dead Sea Rift Valley. So what is sigil to him?
To Dr. Waleed, sigil is not magical pottery. He identifies it geologically as a highly combustible, toxic combination of sulfur, natural asphalt or bitumen, and volcanic rock.
Asphalt. Wait, like the sticky black tar we pave highways with?
Yes.
It rains asphalt.
Yes, it does. And this isn't science fiction. The Dead Sea is historically and geologically famous for this exact phenomenon.
Really? I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. For thousands of years, massive, viscous chunks of natural asphalt would detach from the tectonic vents at the bottom of the Dead Sea and float to the surface.
That sounds crazy.
It was so common that the ancient Greeks actually called it lake asphaltites.
Lake asphaltites, wow.
And the ancient Egyptians used Dead Sea bitumen for their mummification processes. Furthermore, this entire fault line is incredibly active. It is prone to sudden, massive sinkholes, lethal releases of toxic sulfur gas emissions, and severe geothermal activity.
So when the text says these corrupt civilizations were punished with sigil, it isn't describing a magical event at all.
Not at all.
It is describing a localized, horrific natural disaster. The fault line basically ruptured under their feet, venting toxic sulfur gas, explosive volcanic material, and literal flaming asphalt.
Exactly. He takes the miraculous and grounds it in the deeply specific, violent geological reality of this exact coordinate.
That is terrifying.
And he takes this interpretation even further, and this is truly fascinating, when he re-examines the famous story of the birds of Ababil attacking the companions of the elephant.
Right, okay. For those who don't know the traditional folklore here, an invading army with war elephants marches on the holy city to destroy it. And God supposedly sent flocks of birds, the birds of Ababil, carrying small stones of baked clay in their beaks, which they dropped like tiny bombers on the army, destroying them.
That is the accepted folklore, yes.
Tiny bomber birds.
But Dr. Waleed, sticking to his strict methodology, goes back to the linguistics. The word Ababil in ancient Arabic does not necessarily mean a biological bird.
What does it mean?
It translates much more accurately to successive waves or flocks in succession.
So not a flock of sparrows, but a flock of something else.
Dr. Waleed argues this wasn't a magical avian airstrike. If these events happened in the Dead Sea Rift Valley, as his mapped coordinates insist, then the successive waves dropping sigil were not birds.
Then what were they?
They were successive waves of geological, volcanic, and asphaltic eruptions expelled violently from the active fault line.
Oh, wow. So according to Dr. Waleed, it's less like birds dropping pebbles and more like the Earth itself has a localized seismic defense system built into this specific rift valley.
A seismic defense system, yes.
Imagine being an ancient soldier. An army marches into the deepest trench on Earth, the pressure builds, the fault line ruptures, and suddenly you are bombarded by successive waves of flaming sulfur and boiling liquid asphalt shot hundreds of feet into the air by tectonic pressure.
It is a terrifying image, and more importantly for his thesis, this horrific geological event perfectly explains the physical aftermath described in the text.
What does the text say happened to them?
The text says the defeated army was turned into eaten chaff.
Eaten chaff. Like chewed up straw or disintegrating leaves.
Exactly. If you are hit by a pebble drugged by a bird, you get a bruise. But if an army is bombarded by burning sulfur and highly acidic, boiling asphalt raining down in waves...
The human body doesn't just get crushed.
No.
It deteriorates. It burns, it melts. The flesh literally turns into eaten chaff.
It is a brutal, scientifically accurate description of a tectonic catastrophe.
It takes a story that sounds like a children's fable
Right.
and turns it into a disaster movie.
Uh-huh.
It really makes you feel the heat and smell the sulfur of that valley.
It absolutely grounds the narrative in physical reality. But, this raises a massive, unavoidable question, and it is the culmination of Dr. Waleed's entire thesis.
The elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Because if all of this is true, if Moses, the destruction of Lot, the companions of the elephant, and the life of the Prophet Muhammad all happened right here in the Levant, clustered around this specific Dead Sea Rift Valley.
Which is what he's arguing.
Why does traditional history place so many of these events, especially the life of Muhammad in the Holy City, hundreds of miles to the south in the Arabian desert? How did the map get moved?
That is what Dr. Waleed calls the Great Geographic Shift. He claims that a massive, intentional, historical cover-up occurred over the centuries following these events.
A cover-up by who? And how do you even pull off a cartographic heist of that scale?
He attributes this cover-up to the ideological lineage he identified earlier.
The accursed tree.
Yes. He argues that this faction, in their ongoing multi-generational effort to distort the truth, hoard power, and control the narrative, didn't just alter words in religious texts. They realized that to truly control a people, you have to disconnect them from their land.
So they intentionally altered the geography.
They physically moved the map. They shifted the names of the holy sites. The name of the original sanctuary, Bakka, the location of the mount, the location of Midian. Dr. Waleed asserts that as empires rose and fell, and as this ideological faction exerted influence over centuries of literature and tradition, they gradually relocated these names far to the south.
What was their goal?
Their goal was specifically to obscure the true northern locations and to sever the historical and theological connections anchored to the Rift Valley.
It's the ultimate form of disinformation. If you want to conquer a people's history, you don't just burn their books. You convince them that their history happened somewhere else entirely.
Exactly.
But logistically, how does that work? You can't just pick up a city and move it.
Think about how empires operate. When colonial powers or conquering empires move into a new territory, or when a ruling class wants to legitimize their current capital, they often appropriate the names of prestigious ancient sites.
Oh, like how the original New York was actually named New Amsterdam.
Right.
Or how there are dozens of cities named Alexandria all over the place. You just take the name of the holy site and apply it to a new location to give it instant heritage.
That's it, exactly. Give it a few centuries, control the schools and the texts, and eventually everyone forgets where the original even was.
People just accept the new map.
Exactly. Dr. Waleed calls this concept distortion. In Arabic, the term is tarif. In traditional theology, we usually think of tarif as changing a few words in a book, maybe tweaking a translation to change a law. But Dr. Waleed is arguing for a physical, cartographic tarif. They physically renamed the map to hide the true theater of revelation.
So in this radically rewritten map, where does that leave the Prophet Muhammad in Dr. Waleed's view? Who was he fighting and what was he actually fighting for?
Dr. Waleed asserts that Muhammad was indeed an Arab of the Quraysh tribe, but his historical and geographical center of gravity was intimately linked to Abraham.
Okay.
And Abraham's historical center is almost universally recognized as being in Hebron in Palestine.
Right on the western flank of our Rift Valley map.
Exactly. Dr. Waleed argues Muhammad had no connection to the rebellious Israelite lineage, the accursed tree, but rather he was fighting a desperate battle against them to defend the original house, the original sanctuary, in its true ancient northern geography.
He wasn't starting something new in the deep desert. He was fighting to hold the literal ground of the original Tua, the folded valley, against the faction that kept trying to corrupt it.
Yes. If we pull all the way back and connect this to the bigger picture, we see the ultimate constant in Dr. Waleed's thesis. He repeatedly quotes the principle from the text, "The house has a Lord who protects it."
The house has a Lord who protects it.
Dr. Waleed sees a repeating historical pattern of divine defense at this specific, fixed geographic choke point.
It's the bottleneck of history. Whether it was the earth defending the valley against the companions of the elephant with waves of volcanic sigil, or later historical events that happened in that exact same region.
Like what?
Well, like the Mamluks miraculously defeating the unstoppable Mongols at the Battle of Ain Jalut in the Galilee. Or even going all the way back to young David defeating Goliath near Jerusalem. It all happens right here, on the edges of this same rift.
The human actors constantly change. The empires rise and fall. The maps are furiously redrawn by victors and distorters trying to claim the heritage. But the tectonic plate, the deep valley, the stage itself, it remains fixed, quietly waiting for the next act in the drama.
Okay, we need to take a breath and really recap the staggering scope of what we just explored today, because this is a lot to process.
It is a massive amount of information.
We started with a single, seemingly simple word in ancient Arabic Tua, folded. And Dr. Waleed used the linguistic root of that word to drop a precise pin on the Dead Sea transform fault.
A literal folded valley.
Right. And from there, we built a topographical map based on Moses walking from east to west, giving us Midian in Jordan and Palestine in the west.
The coordinates of Revelation.
We compressed thousands of years of sprawling history, from Moses all the way to Muhammad, into a single, hyper-localized, violently active geographic theater.
Fixed place, moved time.
We redefined trees not as plants, but as ancient ideological lineages warring across time. We reimagined magical burrs and miraculous punishments as brutal, sulfurous geological eruptions of asphalt.
The sigil.
And finally, the suggestion of a massive, centuries-long cartographic cover-up that shifted the center of a faith hundreds of miles into the desert.
Yeah.
It is, honestly, a breathtaking reassembly of history.
It is a profound and radical reimagining of how we read history and scripture. And regardless of whether one accepts his final conclusions, Dr. Waleed has shown how applying the strict, uncompromising lens of modern geology and literal linguistics to ancient texts can completely rewrite our understanding of the past.
It really forces you to look at the world differently.
It does, and it leaves you with a deeply unsettling final thought. Well, if entire mountains, massive rift valleys, and globally recognized holy cities can be effectively misplaced by centuries of human tradition, political narrative, and cartographic distortion, what other ancient truths that we take for absolute granted are just waiting for a proper geological survey to be rediscovered?
It makes you wonder what other historical X-rays we have been completely misreading simply because we assumed we already knew what the bones look like. If you're listening, I hope this challenged your mental map today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Dr. Khaled Waleed's fascinating research. Keep questioning the map, look a little closer at the landscape beneath your feet, and we will see you next time.